Welcome to the TikTok podcast. The clock is always ticking, so let's synchronize our watches and dive in. I'm your host, Callie Brigham, and I'm here to help you make time for what matters. Hey friends, welcome to this bonus episode. You know, when you already know it's going to be a good one, like you just know it. You just, in your knowingness, you just know it. Okay, I hope I didn't just set us up for a huge disaster of a podcast. I'm confident I did not. But in my knowingness, I know today is going to be a really good one. Why? Because both of us want to be the best at everything, and we want everything we do to be basically epic. So no pressure, HDK. But I said at the beginning, I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and intro you like you're not here. But I already feel like you should like say hi or...
I'm like, wait, me, hi.
Yeah, see, I knew it. I knew this was gonna happen, but it's true. We're gonna bring you our best today because that is who we be together, and that's one of the things that just, I don't know, just makes us super tight in life. So let me tell you though a little bit about Heather. I will say that I knew of Heather before I actually met her because her reputation preceded her in all the good ways. So when I think about Heather, I think about ambition, hard work, and I think about her being an ultimate overcomer. She will constantly push herself to new heights, and I have mad respect for that. She and her husband, Frank, are about as perfect a couple as you could imagine or ever want to be, like goals. Okay, the two of them. If you can't have Heather without Frank, you can't have Frank without Heather, and nor would anyone want either one alone. We love them together. Heather is a lover of movies, mimosas, and early mornings. Is that right, Heather?
That about sums me up.
I'm going to add in getting it in a good workout is important. Loving on your fur babies and animal babies, super important too. And now I will say you have a very strong social media presence. So I know everyone feels like they already know you. And that I think is one of your superpowers too, is your ability for people to say, she is my friend. I know her. She knows me. She gets me. She sees me. So Heather, I think you are fierce. You are fun. You're an amazing friend. You are an honorary auntie to my kids who think you are the coolest and they adore you, except for your taste in football.
Yeah, and my words that are from slang from the 70s. Like if I can get those two things, I'm gonna be in.
I mean, my kids are brutal. I will say, they pull no punches, especially when it comes to you. They feel really safe with you, so they can just let you have it, which is true. And, you know, not everyone will get this, but I mean this as the greatest compliment. But in a sea of dolphins, Heather, you are a shark, my friend.
Takes one to know one. Shark, no shark.
Shark, no shark. Okay. Without further ado, you may know her as Heather Daniel Kent. You may know her as my son says, HDK. Please welcome my dear friend Heather to today's.
Thank you. I'm like, keep going. Like, this is great. I'm loving it.
It is great because you're great. There's so much more. I mean, I was like, how do I intro a girl that I've literally traveled the world with, who's been in my home, who we have cried together, we've laughed together, we have shared our darkest, deepest secrets together. You know, what more can you say? But I had to stop at some point because we got to get to the reason that you're on today, why you're getting paid the big bucks to talk to us today.
Yes, I expect my check any day now.
Exactly. All right. So there's so many things that we're going to cover today, but I will say this too, Heather, our uniqueness in our, not only our one-on-one friendship, but our friend group is the things that we're going to talk about today. We didn't just save them for this podcast. We literally talk to each other about these things all the time. Is that normal?
I don't know as if it is normal because sometimes I check myself when I have other conversations with other people and I'm like, oh, you don't care, like you don't want to be better like right now than you were yesterday, and you don't want to like know yourself, and you don't want to like I don't know. My intensity sometimes is matched in our friend group, but it's a little much some other places.
Yeah, it's a little much, and we're okay with that. Like, for example, Braden and I were listening to a podcast the other day. I was taking him to soccer practice, and I literally had to get on and message Heather and some of our friends and be like, okay, listen to this podcast, Rich Roll. And he was talking about like high capacity, high level, insane athletes and talking about the bone marrow and swimming with sharks. And, and I'm like, and I'm getting back from you just as much as I'm giving. I'm like, yeah, these are my people. Like, you're my girl. So if it's weird, I want it. I want more of it.
I agree. I think it is the true definition of ironing, sharpening iron. And and I don't know I mean, God orchestrated this relationship for sure, but it's very rare, I think, with two very high achievers in the same industry, in the same company, same age, same like place. And yet there's not, and we are both highly competitive, highly. Oh, we're gonna play games next week together. I don't know. I'm starting to sweat already. Like I got
Pistol
Heather. You better
squats,
not bring a
pistol
game that
squats.
she's.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh my god.
Well, and we make everything a competition. That's why I said we were doing. Her husband was doing a little workout with us. Was it? Where was it? I don't know where it was, on a Alaskan cruise or something. And we were doing pistol squats, and all of a sudden, pistol squats became the game and the competition. It was like, I've been practicing, by the way, but
I can't win, so I'm not going to play. And so there's that.
yeah.
But I love that it is never a competition of who we are and what we bring to the table. It's just there is this beautiful, like, I'm going to bring you my best. And you're going to bring me your best, and it's going to be different. And I think it takes a high level of self awareness and also interest in other people, like a willingness to know people that I think is very rare. Because I think high achieving women together can sometimes, it can, especially when they're both sharks, we can start to nibble on each other, and that's not the way it is at all.
It's really not. And I think that was one of the reasons I wanted to have some conversations with you that we are happy to have one-on-one, but we're going to open up the gates. We're going to peek behind the curtain. Y'all are welcome to come on in to the kinds of conversations that Heather and I have with each other, but we also share with our team. So most recently, we decided that better together, we just started collaborating a lot with our sales teams. We started collaborating with training, and I love the way you think. And I really believe that some of the things you're going to say are going to unlock some things for our listeners today. And you already started to allude to it. So like, let's kind of dive into the first part of the conversation we're going to have. And, obviously this all does boil down to like, how do we manage our time, our life, etc. But I think one of the main ways that we do that is, you already mentioned, knowing yourself. And one of the huge ways of knowing ourselves is identifying our strengths and aligning ourselves with that. And I know this is a passion topic for you. So let's start there, Heather. What are your thoughts about that? How do you work in your strengths? Why is that important?
Okay, so it is a huge passion point for me. And I think it always has been, because I have been a person who didn't know who they were. Like struggling with identity has been something that identity was a fluid concept. It depends on who is around, and it depends what other people thought of me. And it's been that way since as long as I can remember. And I think that is part of being an Enneagram 3 to a degree. But also, there is an element of I was told one thing about myself growing up from my parents, things like that. And it never fit. Like I never felt like I was comfortable in my own shoes. I never felt like I had any power. And I just felt like I was drifting a little bit. And nothing felt authentic. And the only thing I want to be is authentic. And so when you want to be something, but don't know what that is, it creates just a conflict of self. And so that's why I think I love this so much. And poor people that talk to me on the daily, that's not you and our friends, because like I'm talking to people and I'm like, ooh, what's your Enneagram? Ooh, what are your 10 top strength finders? And people are like, I don't know the words that are coming out of your mouth. And I'm like, but I don't know how to communicate with you if you don't tell me what you are. Because how can I speak your language if I don't know what your language is? And I think the first thing is just in case you are like me and you're listening to this and you've struggled with who you are and who like who you really are. Who did God make you to be? Not who your parents thought you should, not who, like my husband, he is really wonderful and he just always thinks I'm the best. Well, I can't always be the best. Like, I know I would like to be, but like
Close to it. Yeah.
close. But it's sometimes that's not helpful, you know? Like I just struggled there. So man, I think the first thing I started learning was love languages. And love languages, Frank and I did together. And that I mean, we'd been married like maybe 5 years and we've known each other since I was 11. So we've grown up together. And yet when we did love languages, it's like a light went on and he looked at me and he's like, no offense. And you know, nothing ever is good before you say no offense. I'm automatically offended. But he said, no offense. I just thought you liked people to do things for you and buy you stuff. I didn't know that that's how you gave and receive love, which is acts of service and gifts. And he's like, I just honestly thought it was a little bit of like a entitlement thing or a selfish thing. And I was like, oh, I mean, I guess I could see how that's perceived. It's not how I mean it. But then also with him, his quality time is his number one. And poor guy, words of affirmation. And it's like my bottom thing ever. But he, like his 40th birthday, I'll never forget. I am gifts. I bought him 40 presents. And I mean, grills, Michael Jordan 4s, like expensive, beautiful things, 40 of them individually wrapped in the living room. And that morning I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I have done this whole thing in my giving love and nothing. Gifts is his lowest one. Nothing about who he is. So I very quickly arranged a dinner for all of our friends to go out for quality time. But like that was like that to me, that love languages was like the first thing that's like, okay, people speak different languages and you need to know that. And you need to know yours. I am acts of service. Like if I love you, I will do something for you. And I'll buy you something that's really important to what I think would be important to you, not just anything. So that was big. And then basic needs. And so my whole point is I took a deep dive into all these things, but basic needs, when I realized that I'm power and achievement, and then freedom and choice is my second one. But it was important for me to know that I would rather win versus do it the way I want to do it. When rubber meets the road, winning is the most important thing to my needs. And winning is a definite, I mean, it can be anything. I will make it when I can win at anything. It does not matter during the day. I am the best dog mom ever. Like I can win all the time, but I needed to know that because I need to self-coach. I need to motivate myself. You know, that's so much of what we're going to talk about. Well, how do you know how to motivate yourself if you don't know what's motivating to you? And so that was huge. And then strengthsfinders was big the first time, but then enneagram was like, it's just trendy and it's easy to follow people on Instagram. And so I kind of took a deep dive there. But when I went back to strengthsfinders, and this is where I'll land, is the second time I opened it, I looked at that. And of course, I'm like, well, these aren't very good. Like I want better ones. Like these people have that. And like, I don't know about I don't know. And because they're very, very heavy in one, very heavy. The top 7 are the same domain. And that's not a typical thing that happens. And so when I looked at that the second time, I said, okay, this is who God made me to be. My mom didn't make me this way. My dad did not make me this way. My community, this is who God made me to be. And if I can hone in here, I'm fulfilling my purpose and nothing else matters to me more than doing what I'm supposed to be doing and why I'm here. But I can get in there and go, so my top 7 are in the influencing domain, if you know StrengthsFinders. Well, okay, what does that tell you about me? That God made me to influence. And if I'm not living in that where I feel like I can make a difference or have impact, I'm not going to feel me. I'm not going to feel authentic. I'm not going to feel powerful. And I'm not contributing to my purpose. So a lot of those, I think they're so important. It's also just a quick story on one of the strength finders. One of mine is individualization. Well, this is like a lifelong process. I feel like every week I'm like, hey, this is what I'm learning about myself. It's so fascinating. You want to continue to do that. But one of my strength finders is individualization. Well, I listened to the podcast. I took my notes. I was reading it, and I was like, oh my word. I have been labeled as a rebel, difficult, non-conformative, and a lot of those things are absolutely true. I tend to buck like you tell me what to do, and I'm going to go, yeah, but we should maybe think about that, or what about, have you heard that about that? Like, I'm constantly pushing back on an idea. Well, it's my individualization, because I want people to feel seen and I want people to feel heard. And if I think the message is too broad and I think that it's only from one perspective, I'm going to push on it, and not consciously, instinctually. And so sometimes that looks like I'm being a pain. And it looks like, especially to people that are maybe in charge of the situation, it kind of feels defiant. It kind of feels like I'm resisting, when really that's just a mislabeling of my desire to see people and to have people feel seen. And so I mean, that happened like a month ago. I'm like, okay, this is amazing. I've learned so much, but now I know how to position it instead of just instinctually, boom, I can say, okay, so have we thought about how it will land with, so I know how to phrase it better, so I don't just look like I'm bucking something, if that makes sense. Very long answer for why I think this is really important, how to do it.
Well, Heather, I have a question. Do you think that this is an important part of?
I think it's the most important thing you can do in your whole life.
Okay, it is. And here's the deal. And we've had conversations about this too that have evolved. I think sometimes as women, starting to know ourselves can either feel selfish, maybe. It can feel there's so many different ways to go with this, but it can feel selfish. It can even feel labeled here. It can feel exhausting. Like, I've got to be everything to everybody else, even though I don't have that in me. So maybe we'll talk about that too. How do we best be who we need to be to other people without burning ourselves out at the same time? So put a pin in that. We'll come back to that in a second. But one of the things that, as I mentioned, that has evolved for us is knowing yourself not only helps you align and work, I think, more authentically you in your joy zone, etc., but it also helps you present yourself to the world in a more confident and a way that they understand you. Right? It's kind of like what you were just saying. When you know this about yourself and you can present it in a healthy way to somebody else, they then understand you better. It's like this cycle that is not selfish, actually. It's pretty much the opposite.
I think it's completely the opposite. And, I remember one of my coaches would always say, because he was super into not necessarily like the things to know yourself, but just knowing yourself in general. And he would say, Heather, the more you know yourself, the more you can remove yourself. And if you want to be a great mentor and a great coach, that's not about you. So if you know that this is how you're going to think about it, and this is what's going to trigger you, this is what's going to excite you, this is where you're going to go, you need to know that, because then you can remove it so that you can be all about that person. And I think it's the most unselfish thing that you can do. And the number one person who's benefited from all of my work is my husband. He calls me coach. Sometimes he texts me and he's like, hey, coach, I got a question. Because who does he get to talk to? I mean, he runs his own business. I guarantee they're not doing a podcast today talking about betterment of themselves. Like, he's a contractor. Who does he get to talk about these things with? And so number one, I guarantee, he's even said it the other day. He's like, so we're talking about, I don't even know what we're talking about. And he's like, yeah, but you're better than you used to be, and you can handle it better than you did before. And I'm like, oh, like, because he doesn't normally say like, you've really grown in your personal development. Like it's not what we talk about. So that was interesting that he saw that, recognized it, and then he utilizes it. Like we were trying to solve a problem within our family is what we were doing. He's like, but no, you can do this because you've studied here, you've worked here. That's pretty cool.
That's super cool. And I'm also thinking for his 50th birthday, 50 reasons why you love him so much and why he's so great is, I know.
Can
start now.
Can ChatGPT do that for me?
Absolutely. Authentically you means sometimes use ChatGPT. Yeah. Okay, so I said we put a pin in how do we not burn out when now that we know this about everybody. I mean, that's like a heavy responsibility. How do we be ourselves and then also be available for the people that are different? How do we do that?
No, that is an interesting question. So how can you be available for other people? I think, where do your strengths lie? So with my strengths, I'm high communication, I'm high woo, I'm high significance. And so where can and maximizer, that's the one that sort of gets me in trouble sometimes. Like I want to take good people to great. Like it is a strong motivator to me to produce that. So I think there's always connections that you can make. There's always like, oh, we have that in common. Oh, we can do that. One of our friends has high significance together. And so we talk about significance together and what that looks like. I think that you can always find a commonality, or you can use somebody somebody in our friend group. He is high context, and context is one of my last ones. Like he loves to look at the past. He loves to think and get all that information. And I don't love to do any of that. So I can, hey, help me with that. Can you deep dive into that? Because I know you're going to deep dive into that. And then tell me what you find so that I can implement it for us. Like, I feel like you can help collaborate as a team better when you know those things. And it's energy. That's energy giving for him, and it's energy giving for me. And we don't have to step on each other's toes. And then I don't have to do the things I don't want to do. And he doesn't have to communicate it out to people. On it. Ready.
You nailed it. I wrote down on my notes, collaboration. Because, I mean, it's like Jerry Maguire, you complete me. Hey, I just said a movie quote.
That's like 2 in 2 days.
I know. You have a baby in a bar, and Mrs. Doubtfire. Yes.
Help is on the way, dear.
Help is on the way, dear. Love it. Okay. Heather knows every movie quote. I'm like giddy with excitement that I just said my third one, but it's true. There is a magic and a power, and we could even talk about it in a family unit, in a business unit, we don't have to be scared of somebody else's strengths. As a matter of fact, we can welcome them in. So I'm thinking about even in my family with Josh, Maddie, and Braden. Okay, what do we each bring to the table? Well, wouldn't our lives, our day go so much better if this is what Josh is good at in the morning? This is what Braden can handle. This is Maddie's kind of like, get out the way, I'll do it all, kind of thing. But I could give her more responsibility in certain areas that she wants to live up to. And that fills her cup. And then all of a sudden our family's running so much better because our needs are being met, our love languages are being spoken, our strengths are being used. I mean, that right there, like, okay, the check is in the mail for you, Heather, on that one.
Dude, it has to be. This is so good. Because what you just said was, how do we be all things to all people? The answer is you don't. And nor do you try. You don't feel bad about it. You don't make excuses for it. You're not apologetic for it. It's empowering.
Yes. See, you guys just witnessed exactly what happens when Heather and I talk. We're so weird and it's so good. And then a lot of times we'll do this on Zoom and our teams are there and this kind of thing happens and we're like, and their faces are like, okay, yeah. We're like, no, don't you get it? We just figured it out. Okay. So we got more stuff to figure out here. One thing that you know about me, Heather, because I know you're up early. So when I'm walking early, you get a lot of messages from me in the morning. And one of the things you heard me say one time is I do something hard every morning just to just to do it. Like I got it out of the way. And for me, it's running in Florida when I'm as old as I am, broke down as I am, 100% humidity, no clouds in sight. I don't run in the shade. It's hard every day. It's hard. Every day it's hard. Okay, so I know that you are a fan of doing hard things too. Not that we don't love it, but we love it when we've done it. So strategies, Heather, for tackling hard tasks, especially being real when you don't feel like it, when you are not, because we are not always motivated. Don't get it twisted. We're not always motivated, but we do hard things. How do you do hard things?
Okay, so like I was thinking about one of the hardest things I've ever done, of course, is swimming from Alcatraz prison to the shore. Like, and
Meanwhile, I'm talking about running 2.5 miles, 3 miles, and you're swimming 2.5, 3 miles.
I tend to do big, hard things. Like it takes me years to do it, and you're doing it a little bit every day. It's just broken up a little bit. So it's been almost 3 years to the day, by the way, that I did that swim. And I think about it all the time because it was so impactful for me. And there's just not enough time to tell you everything I learned in there. But I think, when you're in the water and it's freezing cold and your hair is literally being ripped from your scalp with your wetsuit, and the waves, you can't breathe. There's no breathing. And I live in Missouri. I did not train in the ocean. I trained in a nasty lake. You don't get to learn and to experience how waves hit you in salt water, and you can't breathe, and you can't do anything. And the very last thing I wanted to do was to put my head back in that water and continue to swim. But the only thing you could do is to get out of the situation, is to put your head in the water and to swim. And I remember the moment when I stopped panicking and started moving. And it was the moment that the result was, Heather, how bad do you want out of this ocean? Real bad, like right now. Okay, then swim. And so I think about that all the time. I'm like, okay, if I've got something challenging in front of me, and challenging to me can be two different things. You can actually have like a challenge that's hard, but you know what's the most challenging for me is boring things. Monotonous, boring, like this consistent day in, day out, like taxes is the hardest thing that I do. That is a true statement. So the boring things are the most difficult, but if I can just gut up and get to the only way through is through. And the only way to get on the other side, and the longer I sit in panic, the more that current takes me back. So Heather, this is how I talk to myself every day. I get amped sometimes because sometimes I require myself to get amped. And so I got to remember what's on the other side. And I am, what I know about myself now, it's my futuristic. My futuristic can paint a picture of what it feels like if I stay and what it feels like if I move. And you've heard me say this many times, is I hang on to pain very tightly. Like I use it, pain is more motivating to me than pleasure. And so I hold to that pain. How long do you want to feel like this, Heather? How long do you want to feel like this? How long do you want to let that current? So I paint myself that picture, and I kind of get myself going, and then I put my head down and swim. And so it's one of coaches would always say, slow down to speed up. And I think sometimes if you take a step back and go, okay, why do I want to do this hard thing? Why do I need to do this hard thing? Why am I willing to do this hard thing? What result am I going to get if I do or don't? And slow down, identify those things, and then get into motion. And I am high activator, so I am in motion quickly. And I think that is a real service to me. It has its downfalls, but it makes me very impatient, and which is bad when you're dealing with a lot of things. But man, it's really good when I don't need to have patience with pain. I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to survive. I see people that just they're just doing what they can to survive, and they're hanging on, and they're like just that. Nope. I would rather be in an immense amount of pain for a short amount of time than have a slow burn. I'm not interested. That's probably why I don't run every day, and I'll just swim from Alcatraz to the shore one time every 3 years instead of running. Like, I don't want to be in pain. So how can I use that to do the things that aren't even that hard? That's what you always learn when you're done is, well, it wasn't even as bad as I thought it was. I was being very dramatic about everything, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. That's what I learned in therapy. That's the one thing I learned. It's never as bad as you think it is.
Not only that, but for context, it was at least 6 months after this Alcatraz swim before Heather would talk to her closest friends about it, you guys. I mean, we're like cheering her on from afar. We're like, oh my gosh, you guys did it. You're amazing. And tell us about it. She's like, that. We're like, wait, you're not going to talk to us about, nope, I can't talk about it. I can't talk about it. I can't talk about it. Finally, you were willing to talk about it a little bit. Then you started to think about some lessons that you learned. Now, 3 years later, you're insane enough to say you're going to do it again.
Maybe.
But still, the fact that you would even say and consider doing it again, that's what happens with hard things. Mm-hmm. Not only is it not as bad as you thought it was, but who you became through the process made that particular hard thing not feel like that was hard.
Right.
And if that's not hard, then the next thing might be a little hard, but not too hard, right? So It's like developing this that's not too hard muscle and also having lessons through it. So it wasn't wasted. You know, it was not only not wasted, but now you're like, if I could do that, guess what else I could do?
And that's why you got to do hard things, just like your run every day. I mean, every day you get proof positive that you can do hard things. So what could you, like, to everybody who's listening, what could you do today to do something hard? Or what can you remember? What can you put your fingers on and your memory on and go, no, man, I made it through that divorce. I made it out of that household. I made it through college. Like, you've got muscles in there and they're under there somewhere. Even if they're been unused, they're under there. That's what I think about every time I do abs. I'm like, they're under there. I swear they're under there somewhere. Like, I know they're there. Like, you've got them. Even if you haven't used them in a while, you still have muscle memory for hard things. You just have to remember it and keep it tight. Keep it fresh with you. And sometimes they're painful, and you got to be willing to do that.
So really, everybody has their Alcatraz, right? They had their moment. They thought they were going to drown. They had their moment. I don't think I can do this. But you're proof right here today, if you're listening, that you did. You finished the swim. You made it through. You didn't sink to the bottom. Or if you did sink a little bit, you got back up to the surface. Everybody has their thing, Heather. And you may not have been able to talk about it for a little while. But there will come a day if you decide, not only can you talk about it, it can be the story. It can be the thing that now you're known for.
And that is why we go through pain, so we can teach others. That's the number one reason. And if you're at a place where you're like, you know what, I've got an Alcatraz, get out and share it. Get out and teach it. Get out and help somebody else through theirs. I think that's the beautiful thing about pain, is that you can learn from it. It's a very valuable lesson, and you can learn from mine and I can learn from yours. That fires me up. When we can help others through our pain, then it makes it worth it.
So worth it. I feel like I just want to keep beating that drum, that for women to find purpose in their pain. We've heard the little cheesy sayings, right? Your test becomes your testimony. Your mess becomes your message, but it's not cheesy in reality. It is the truth. And if there's maybe nothing else that you hear from us today, we don't want you to waste it. We don't want you to stuff it down or put it away or not use it. You're supposed to use these things because you're a survivor. You made it through, and we want to help other people. We want to help them finish their swim too.
Right. So not only do you want to do all that, but you can't do all of that if you're living in shame, if you're beating yourself up about it, if you're feeling guilty. Like all of those emotions have zero place in anything. Like ditch it all, because yeah, you went through some stuff and maybe you caused it. Maybe I signed up for Alcatraz. I paid money to inflict this pain on myself. Like maybe you did it to yourself. Let go of the shame and let go of the guilt, and you can still teach from that place and share from that place.
And for crying out loud, if you are at the end of the swim, but you're just still staying in the water, or you're deciding to now swim back to Alcatraz, like get out of the water, walk out of the water, crawl out of the water, get pulled out of the water. It doesn't really matter. But so many women, Heather, stay in the water.
That makes me very, very sad. It makes me feel like, and because it's all that potential just drifting, because that's what happens in water. It drifts away and it becomes obsolete, and it's not effective, and God can't use you if you don't get out of the water. That's really good.
Well, thanks for being the one to actually do the swim so I can talk about it.
Thanks for running every day.
You can talk about it too. And I will say, one thing I do talk about, Heather, in my run is where I live. You've been there, you've walked with me, so you know what I'm talking about. But the wind comes from one direction or the other always. It either comes from the east, it comes from the west, right? So one part of your walk, you are walking, running, whatever it is, swimming into the wind. It is hard. It pushes against you. It's noisy. It's distracting. And the other way, the wind is at your back, and you flow, and it's made easier, and you get there faster, and you can see clearly, hear clearly. And that kind of brings us back full circle to working in your strengths, not working in your strengths, right? And when we will utilize the wind at our back, how much further faster we go together.
And it takes a decision and a pivot to get in that right wind. Like it doesn't just happen. The wind doesn't change. You actually changed. You're the one that turned around in order to get that wind at your back. So what decision do you need to make today that you're resisting? Like sometimes we make our own wind. We resist the things that we don't want to do, that we're unwilling to do. If we would just turn around and stop resisting, the wind could be at your back. And it's never as hard as you think it is. But sometimes the resisting is the hard part. Just speaking from somebody who just tends to be resistive. I tend to be that way. So I understand.
So next time I'll just say, right wind, Heather, right wind. Get yourself in the right. And I'll say that to myself, obviously, not just you. Anything I say to you, I'm saying to me and more. All right. So, man, as you can see, if you're listening, this is just something that we believe in for ourselves. We believe in for other women. I don't want to leave anything unsaid, Heather. You work with women all day, every day. You are at the top of your game. You understand strengths. You understand overcoming. You understand. Is there anything else that you feel like, gosh, there's just this one more thing I want to talk to or express to somebody who's listening, who might be at that pivotal moment? You know, they were motivated, they're not. They had a winning mindset, they didn't. They're facing challenges, or they're like getting their mojo going. Is there anything else? You've got so much wisdom. You've read so many things. You've learned so many things. Is there anything else that you just feel strongly you want to share?
I think the only thing is that sometimes when you're stuck or you're frustrated or you're not getting the results that you want, take a step back and look at how you're leading yourself well in areas of your life. I think because, some of the questions that we had talked about was so many of like, how do you get out of where you are? Well, the answer is typically in your health, your time, your money, your relationships, your habits. like, where do you need to dig in there and lead yourself better? My first place, I remember the first time I ever heard that concept, the first place I knew I needed to be was my relationships, because it was not just my relationships with others, not just my relationship with God, which needed a lot of work, but my relationship with myself. And so when I started there, then I could move to the next thing and then the next thing. So you don't have to have it all figured out. I think you immediately know what area you need to lean into. So just take that one step in that one area, feel victorious, feel powerful, share it with somebody else. And that's what I love about social media. That is what I love about social media, is that I can take something I've learned or a story or a thought, and I can immediately implement it out there to the millions of people that watch me. These are the stories I tell myself, by the way.
You're on this podcast now, girl. I'm telling you, millions, billions,
I
endless.
love it. But just one at a time. You don't have to know everything, and you don't have to tackle everything at the same time. You can just, get your relationship with God straightened out, and then you can get your health straightened out. So that would be my only thing, is just don't feel overwhelmed. If you were like me and kind of feel like at the place where I learned this, I was drowning like Alcatraz, and I really thought I was going to die. But what's the one thing that you can do?
Okay, we did not plan this ahead, but we did pray over this. That, I'm telling you, Heather, I've had such an aha over this recently. Women don't need more of anything. They don't need more time. They don't need more. What they do need is to prioritize what they have and perfect one thing at a time. Like, we haven't even dug into that yet, you and I together, but we will. If there's one thing that I have had a huge epiphany about, that's what it is. We don't need more of anything. If we needed more, God would have given us more. Mm-hmm. What we need is, with what we have, one thing at a time, prioritized and then perfected. That's the key. That's the key.
And we don't know what that is until we know who we are and what we value and what we prioritize, not what your neighbor and your friend, all of those voices. And we just allow them to penetrate us, when really God knows exactly where he wants you. And if you would just tie into that, I'm speaking to myself too. I mean, we don't need to have everybody's opinions on it. I think because I think he will reveal that to you. I just believe that you ask him for that, and he will imprint it upon you. So it doesn't have to be a democracy.
I wrote down and starred, lead yourself well. And that's where I just want to reaffirm, recommit everybody to that piece today. That really sums up what we talked about today. Heather, I always have a gift. You're a gift person. So I have a gift, but it's pretend and it's fake, and it's not. But we can pretend like it's a great big gift with a big old bow, and it is the gift of the idea of a bonus hour. But it's a gift of a free hour. You can do with whatever you want. Nobody's gonna know. You get to call the shots. My girl, what would you do with a bonus hour?
I get whatever I want. Okay.
Zero judgment. This is Heather's hour.
Okay.
Period.
I want to sit in a bathtub with hot bubble water and with my dogs laying on the floor. And I want somebody to do some kind of AI guru thing. And in my brain, I want them to put all the things I want to know, but don't want to learn. That's what I want. Because Kelly and we actually did talk about this the other day. I'm like, I want to know everything. And I have a deep desire not to learn. I talked about the boring and the sitting and I want them to put those little thingies on my head, and I want them to give me knowledge while I do nothing. That's what I want. You said I could do anything. That's what I want.
And I will proudly say you win at the most unique answer that I have gotten in almost 80 episodes. That you win. You win. I mean, I was tracking with you with the bubble bath and the dogs, and then I was like, and there she goes. Okay. Fantastic answer.
And there she goes. Bye.
I mean, yeah, I said it was a fake gift, and now we know why. Because I hey, normally what I also say at this point is my prayer for you is that you get that opportunity in the next week or so. And so, I mean, I guess I'll say that. I hope you get it. I think
somebody could watch this podcast and go, you know what? I have a device that you could put that.
I have that technology. Wow. Okay. That's excellent. One of the very, very many reasons that I love you. You do make things fun. You do bring a whole new spin to things, my friend. And I am never bored when we are having our conversation. Thank you, Heather.
That's so funny. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for trusting me with this conversation and vice versa. It has been a delight.
Thank you. Trusting me to be on your spectacular podcast. I appreciate it.
1,000%. And you know what? My prophecy was correct. This was probably the best podcast episode that we've ever had. Absolutely. Well, thanks you guys for listening. I do want to remind you that free interest calls are going on right now. So you can go to my website, check it out, DM me, you know the drill, all the above. And at the end of the day, it is about knowing ourselves, leading ourselves well, trusting in that and how God made us. And so on that note, thank you guys for listening. And we'll see you next time. Hear you next time. God bless you. Bye.
Thank you for joining me on the TikTok podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and leave a 5-star review. Your feedback fuels our mission to help you master your time. Set your alarm for our next episode, and until then, make every moment count.